All right, so it's recording now. So today we're going to be, so just as a reminder, we're working on adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. What are we working on?
Positive, negative numbers.
What about the positive and negative numbers?
Subtracting positive and negative numbers.
Just subtracting them?
No.
Adding and subtracting.
Negative and positive.
Copy me. Adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. Okay, what are we doing today?
Adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers.
Good. So at the end of the day today, that's what I expect you to be able to do on your own, okay? So just as a reminder, yesterday we were learning about rule number 1. So we use rule number 1 when the signs are the same or different?
The same.
The same, okay? Today we're going to learn rule number 2. There's only 2 rules to adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. Rule number 2, you use when the signs are different. When do we use rule number 2?
When the signs are different.
Okay, so you only have 2 choices, rule 1 or rule 2, when you look at one of these problems, okay? And when do you know how to use these? Because I feel like this is where we're getting stuck a lot of the times, like, when do I know to use this? How do I know, right? Well, you'll see positive and negative numbers on your thing, and basically you'll say plus or minus, right? And then we know that it's a negative number if there's the negative sign before or after the number.
After the number.
So, let me show you. Do we know that it's before, this is before, or after the number? Which one means negative? Before. Okay, go ahead. So it's before the number, right? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just jump into the lesson because this is a continuation of yesterday's lesson. And so I'm going to start off once again. I'm just going to jump in, and I'm going to start off by doing it as if a teacher gave it to me, okay? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, man, this problem looks a little hectic, but I know I can do this. So I think before I figure out if I'm going to use rule number 1 or rule number 2, I need to rewrite it. So let me just rewrite this first. Okay, so there's nothing in front of the 2. So I know it's a positive 2, and another way I could write positive 2 is plus 2. And for my i's, I'm going to put parentheses. Okay, cool. I'm done with the 2. Now, the next thing is a plus, but there's no number next to it. So I know that all I'm going to do is pull down the plus. Okay, done. Now, this is a negative sign. Right next to it is a 6. So I know this is a negative 6. And for my i's, I will put parentheses. And I'm done. Now I have a problem that I can work with. So I'm going to look at my problem, and let's see. I have a positive 2. So this one's positive, and this one is negative. So it's a plus and a minus. So when I look here, I know I only have 2 rules. Rule number 1 is used when they're the same sign. So it has to either be a plus plus or a minus minus. I don't have that. I have a plus and a minus. So I obviously cannot use rule number 1. Now I'm going to move to rule 2, different signs, plus, minus, plus, minus. Okay, so I'm going to use rule number 2. And in rule number 2, there's 2 steps as well, just like rule number 1. So number 1, I have to subtract the numbers. Okay, so I know that the 6 is bigger, so I'm going to put the 6 on top, and I'm going to subtract the 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. Okay, so I did step 1. Now step 2, use the sign of the bigger number. There's a 2 and a 6. The 6 is bigger, so I know it must be a negative sign. My answer is negative 4. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs to the side. Okay. So we're going to do it as a class now, okay? Okay, the first thing that we need to do, Haiti, what is the first thing that I need to do in this problem?
Separate your numbers.
Separate my numbers, okay. So I get what you're saying. So how do I do that with the 3? How do I rewrite it?
Put the number down.
So I'm going to put my number down. Is there a sign I can put in front of it?
The plus.
Okay. And then what can I do for my eyes, just to make it better for my eyes to see it?
Parentheses.
Parentheses, good. So we're done with that. Now there's a plus here. Jason, is there a number next to it?
No,
So,
it has to be a plus.
good. And then are we done with this?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin, there's a negative sign. Does it belong to a number?
Yes.
What does it belong to?
To 7.
To the 7 because it's right next to it. So I'm going to write -7. And what can I do for my eyes, Kevin? Put parentheses. Gerardo, when we look at this, we have a +3 and a -7. What signs do I have?
A positive,
So we have a positive and a
negative. Oh,
negative. So knowing that we have a positive and a negative, you're correct. Here's a positive and here's a negative. Knowing we have a positive and negative, are we going to use rule number 1 for same signs or rule number 2 for different signs?
different signs.
For different signs. Good. Good job. Because it's a positive and a negative. Okay? Now, we know that we're using rule number 2, Anthony. So if we're using rule number 2, what is the first step in rule number 2?
Subtract the numbers.
Subtract the numbers. So what am I going to subtract, Anthony?
7 minus 3.
7 minus 3,
That'd be 4.
which is 4. Okay? Good. Ashley, what is step number 2? Use the sign of the bigger number. So is the 3 bigger or is the 7 bigger? The 7. So what sign am I using? Positive or negative? The negative sign. So my answer, everybody, is?
-4.
-4. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs to the side? Okay, good.
That was our turn.
Now, I'm going to actually have you work in partners. There's going to be one group. Actually, I want somebody to work with me. You will work with me, Marcel. You two together. You two together. You two together. Anthony and Ashley together. Okay? I don't want to hear that. Thank you. Okay.
So we go
This
first.
is the one that I want you to do. I would like you guys to do it too. Marcel, can you please come up here? Let's do it up here. I need you to go sit with your partner,
Negative
please.
5.
Thank you. And I need you working together, please. So,
It's negative 5. Oh, you don't believe me?
Got it.
Easy.
Yay.
That's easy. -5.
That'll be pretty.
so we have a what sign?
Yep. And it's -5.
So knowing
You got
that, when we look at the rules, are we equal to? Okay, good. So what do we do? Subtract the numbers. So put the bigger number on top.
And then you may almost have the same hairstyle because you do it like
And then the
turn.
smaller number on top.
Yeah,
Subtract them.
you see that same time.
Yeah, me and him had the same hairstyle. Like it turns like
I
it.
need to get a haircut already.
Yeah, I think we get a
But you,
Minus 5.
haircut next week.
Because then you take the sign of the bigger number or smaller?
Again,
Back in.
again, it's negative 5.
Okay,
Oh.
good.
I told you.
What is the problem with this?
Oh,
Has it-
sorry.
He's not doing it.
All right.
I already
So
skipped
good. Good job.
I skipped everything.
All right. Is there a set of students who would like to do this on the board?
Exactly.
Both of you, okay, come on up.
This is the answer.
Did I get it?
Good job.
Water bottle is gonna taste like oil.
Wanna do this one, square it? No, you gotta square it around. And then, and then put the parentheses. And then. And then you put the plus right here, and you look at the bigger number, and it's negative plus.
I really appreciate how you guys work together. Thank you. Here you go. Can you explain to the class what you did, please?
So we did the rules, we noticed that, you know how there's a negative and a positive number? So we remembered that we have rule number 2, so we checked off and put the 4 and the 9 as a parentheses. And then we noticed the number, the no sign, so we put them in a thing, and then we remember rule number 1, subtract the number, and we got 5. And then, but when we did this rule, we noticed that the negative 9 is the biggest number, so we added the negative number and then made it negative 5.
Good. So remember that math is its own language. When we're looking at the problem that you wrote, what are we missing? How can you communicate to me what your answer is?
Oh, I see.
What are you missing?
There's 2 lines.
2 lines.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, it is 2 lines, and what is it called?
Equal.
The equal sign. Remember, math is its own language. You need to show me that you can speak math, right? So for this one, thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs to the side?
Yay.
Okay,
Let's do another one.
let's do another one.
No.
Let's do it together.
What?
This time I would like you to try it on your own, and then we're going to go over it together on the board, okay? I will be coming around to check your answers. 2 plus negative 6.
Just -4.
Good job. You can do it in your head now. Good. You can go back to your seat. Wow, you did that in your head. Good job. And that's what essentially what's going to happen, and you guys should be able to just do it in your head. And did you see how quick you got? You didn't even have to rewrite it. And like I said, you're not always going to have to rewrite it. But it's a good, to rewrite it is a good strategy to use when you want to make sure you're getting it correct.
Done.
What are you missing after the 6? Or, there you go.
I did it.
Forgetting about the equal.
Good job.
Why?
Nice.
It's like the same thing on Google One.
Yeah, I didn't have it.
Yes.
Yeah, but everybody just seems not to jacket. What about the order? Yeah. I have the same jacket at my house, but I need it my credit. After this, I'm gonna go play on my phone. Watch the TikTok videos.
You got that? Problem.
I followed
Now,
Dwayne Johnson and
we have a what
Kevin
sign?
Hart on TikTok.
TikTok for a lot.
I already friended The Rock,
So,
Dwayne Johnson
right.
and
Plus and then a minus.
Kevin
Plus
Hart.
and a minus.
What are you talking about?
And then Quality on his brothers. But I don't know, they look like.
Okay, so we have a plus and a
Videos
minus.
are terrible.
So are the signs the same? So can we use, wait, what did you say? The signs are the same?
No.
No. So can we use rule number 1 or do we want to use rule number 2? Rule number 2. So we're gonna look at rule number 2, and the first step is to subtract the numbers. So you're gonna put the bigger number on top, and then you're gonna minus what? And what is that? So you have 6 logs, and take away 2. You're taking away. So cross off 2. So then you know there's gonna be a 4, so over here put a 4. And then step 2 is to use the sign of the bigger number. Is the 2 bigger or is the 6 bigger? So what sign do we want to use? Good. Do you understand it better? Good job. Good. Okay, who wants to come up and do this? No.
Everyone's like, nope.
I do better.
I don't know why, you're all understanding it.
Yeah, it's just that we all don't want to do it right.
That's fine.
You're like,
No,
nope.
it's just because you don't want to be on video.
I did videos. I did
That's
live
fine,
streams,
too.
you know.
Well, I'm already
Yes,
gonna be in the
I'll be.
video. Right.
Me too. TikTok.
TikTok. Do a TikTok. Anthony, you wanna do a TikTok?
No.
In the Kevin Hart where he says we're doing TikTok, he never gets it right,
You know, he runs through the hallway. I'll do the TikTok.
and everyone's like no,
Do you want me to TikTok?
and they're like no because they're saying because you don't know how TikTok works.
Yeah. Can't find this dude on TikTok.
Yeah. Well, I wonder why he has so many views.
Because he's a noob.
What? Because he isn't the new Jumanji, but Dwayne Johnson has more followers than him.
Dwayne Johnson has more followers than him.
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson's best friend with Kevin Hart.
Yeah. On TikTok.
It's not the what I'm talking. Action in your life too. Wow.
Good job.
Kevin,
So, is it okay with you if I explain what you did? Okay. So what Ashley did, and what a lot of you did,
that's amazing.
is first she rewrote it. So she knew that there was no sign in front of it, so she used the positive sign. And she wrote +2. Then she looked over here. Is there a number next to it?
No.
So then she put the plus. Then there's a negative sign. What number does the negative sign belong to?
The 6.
The 6. So she wrote -6. She used parentheses just for her eyes, so it can look better. And then so she had a positive and a negative. So is that rule number 1 or rule number 2?
2.
Rule number 2. They're different signs. So that means to subtract the numbers. So she did 6 minus 2 equals 4. And then step 2 is to use the sign of the bigger or smaller number?
The bigger number.
The bigger number. And is the 6 bigger or is the 2 bigger?
The
Six.
6 is the bigger number.
So are we using a positive or a negative sign?
Negative.
Negative. Good. Okay. So now we're going into a different type. We're still working on rule number 2. I need you to just follow along with me. This one, you should be able to do this one. You guys should be able to do all of it, but.
Everyone does it.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm going to do this as if it was given to me, okay?
Oh.
I knew the answer to
All right. So,
Finger.
I was given this problem. I can break it down. I can do this. Before I know if I want to use rule number 1 or rule number 2, I need to break down the problem. So, okay. So here's a negative sign, and there's a number right next to it. So that means this is -4. That negative sign belongs to the 4. And I'm going to use parentheses for my eyes. Now, there's a +3. Because it's a positive and it belongs to the 3. It's right next to it. If the sign is right next to a number, it belongs to it. So I'm going to put +3. There is no sign in the middle. Oh, so now I'm done with the +3. There's no sign in the middle, but I know that I have to put a plus. It's always going to be a plus. So, now I have something I can work with. I have -4 plus +3. So, my signs are a negative and a positive. So, rule number 1 is if the signs are the same. Positive and positive or negative, negative. No, don't have that. I have a negative and a positive. They're different signs. So I'm using rule number 2. Rule number 2 says to subtract the numbers. So I'm going to put my bigger number on top and my smaller number on bottom. 4 minus 3 is 1. And then step 2 says use the sign of the bigger number. So use the sign of the bigger number. There's
It's
a 4 and a 3.
Power.
4 is bigger, so it's going to be a negative sign. Negative 1. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs to the side.
This time, can we do one on our own?
We are going to do it as a class first, okay? It's okay. Hold on.
It's negative
20. No,
Okay. So we have negative 2 plus 7. Marcel.
Yeah.
What is the first thing I need to do in this problem?
Rewrite.
Rewrite it. Good. So there's a negative sign. What does it belong to, Marcel?
The part. Letter belongs to
I know what you meant. I was just waiting for you to correct it. And what can I do for my eyes?
parentheses.
Parentheses. Good. So we're done with this. Now, Jennifer, there's a plus sign. Does it belong to any number? It belongs to the 7. Good. So what am I going to write in this parentheses? Positive 7. Good.
I do the answer.
Now I'm done. Anthony, there is no sign here. What sign do I put in the middle?
Plus.
A plus. I need all eyes over here, please. It's always going to be a plus, okay? So, Haiti, what signs do we have?
A positive.
This is a positive?
Yeah.
What is this? You only have 2 choices, positive or negative.
Negative.
So that's a negative. And what is this?
A positive.
A positive, okay? So are the signs the same?
No.
So do we use rule number 1 or rule number 2?
Rule number 2.
Rule number 2, different signs, negative, positive. Okay, so in here, Kevin, we're using rule number 2. What is step 1? Subtract.
Subtract the number.
Okay, so what am I subtracting?
The 2 and the negative 2 and the positive 7.
Okay, so what goes on top?
The 7
Minus 2. What's 7 minus 2, Kevin?
is 5.
It is 5. Jason, we're now on step 2. We use the sign of the bigger or the smaller number?
The bigger number.
The bigger number. Is the 2 or 7 bigger?
The 2. Or actually, it's 7.
It is a 7. So is the 7 a positive or a negative?
A positive.
So is our answer positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. And what's our answer?
Positive 5.
Positive 5. Now you're working with a partner. I need you to go back next to your partner that you were working with earlier. I'd like you to do this problem, please. Negative 4 plus 8. Do this problem with your partner.
It's positive 4. Subtracting order? Or you want to still,
Oh wait, that's an 8 plus.
or you want to still do the order?
And then add that, and then,
Okay.
so it's different signs, negative, positive, something like that. Plus, sign of the sign.
Good.
Actually, it's not that.
Chocolate.
two, use the sign of the,
to positive.
use the sign of the bigger or the smaller number?
Confusing, I keep getting
Is
confused.
the 4 or the 8 bigger? So is it, good. Good job.
ID.
The positive 4.
Good job. Yeah, you can erase it. Good. Good. Were you guys working as a team?
Or you just call me.
I didn't know myself.
So when I ask you to work in a team, I'd like you to work as a team, okay? There's a reason for it. 2 heads are better than 1.
Not really when I'm driving.
So
Wait, I was
are we
helping?
using, so there's a negative and a positive, right? So is that rule number 1 or rule number
I
2?
didn't know this.
Okay, so rule number 2, you have to subtract the numbers. So what's 8 minus 4?
No, you're not. It's 10.
8 minus
You
4.
are stupid.
Marcel, keep it out of there.
No, I'm stupid. You.
Okay. No, it's not negative. Rule number, the step 2 says use the sign of the bigger number. So is it positive or negative?
You're definitely sleeping.
Like an
He's not even sleeping, he's
So it's
just
a 4.
Can
And
I-
then step 2
You know those, you know
says to
those
use
little
the sign
ant
of the
flies?
bigger
You know
number.
those ants?
What's the bigger number? 8 or 4?
You know ants flies?
So it's a positive or a negative?
Ants,
What?
You know,
Say that again?
you know the ants? You know ants?
Because what is step number 2? So look at rule 2, step number 2.
You know they have
Use
wings.
the sign of the
They do
bigger number. Is
They
the
die
4
from-
bigger or is the 8 bigger?
on winter.
So what sign are we
Winter
using?
delicate.
Does that make sense?
Delicate.
You want to do it up here? Go ahead. Okay, I need you to give her your attention, please.
Only ants.
She's coming up to the board to do the problem. Follow the steps, you don't need to look at it.
Why are you forgetting? Wait.
No, she could write it that way. Like I said, you're not always going, here you go. You're not always going to have to write it exactly how I showed you. The reason I break it down like that is so, because some of us think differently, right? So for example, Gerardo is starting to do it in his head. He's not even having to write it down, right? Some of us are starting to not put the positive signs, which is totally fine because 8 is the same as a plus 8, correct? So she does not have to put the pluses if she doesn't want to, okay? It's just the way that I break it down so that way for those of us who don't get it can actually visualize it, okay? So what she did, is it okay if I explain this? Okay, so what she did here is she rewrote it first. She said this negative belongs to the 4, negative 4. This plus belongs to the 8, so a positive 8. There's no sign, so you always put a plus or a minus. Plus sign. And then she said equals. There's a negative and a positive. If there's a negative and a positive, do we use rule 1 or rule 2? Rule 2. Rule 2 says to subtract the numbers. So she said 8 minus 4, which is? What's 8 minus 4?
4.
4. And then step 2 says use the sign of the what number?
The highest
The bigger number.
The big 8. The big
Is the
positive.
4 or 8 bigger?
8.
So is it positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. Okay. Now you're doing it on your own. Do it on your own, please. Negative 7 plus 6.
Is it?
Negative 7 plus 6.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's
She's
positive
sick.
1.
It's negative 1.
Is it?
Get some from my printer.
Oh yeah. I see a 7.
Do you need help?
Can't see that much.
Plus. Oh wait, no, that's, wait, what? Oh wait. Oh yeah, cause, Kevin, you gotta add a plus 2 when you do that rule. Sorry about that.
Genius.
I didn't.
He'll copy. You say, genius. Jason.
Genius.
Stop.
Genius.
Now, Jason.
Or want me to say it one more
You
time?
guys, please stop. Good job.
1 and then negative. There's my answer, -1. Kevin, I need to. Yay.
Sexless thing to go back and forth.
You know what I got it from? Chuck E. Cheese.
So you got it all the way up until the end. When you get to your sign, you use the sign of the bigger number.
I think so.
No, you put the bigger number on top. So 7 minus. Good job.
I didn't answer.
Is this
You want to do it? Go ahead.
for this?
Katie, bigger number on top. A bigger number on top.
It's all chicken.
Is the 6 or 7 bigger?
Expensive. Cheese.
So,
The chicken.
So the 7 should be on top.
This one candy costs $100.
Good.
This one candy costs $50.
Put it there. No.
Did it?
Okay. Thank you. Can I explain?
Yeah.
I'll give you one question. All right. So over here, Jennifer, what does this negative belong to? So we're gonna put -7. What can I do for my eyes? Okay. So I'm done. Now over here, Jocelyn, what does this positive belong to? To the 6. I'm going to write +6. What can I do for my eyes? Good. So I'm done with this. There's no sign, Jason, so what sign do I put?
And plus.
A plus. Katie, we have a positive and we have a negative. Am I using rule 1 or rule 2?
roll 2.
Rule 2. And what is the first step in rule 2?
Use the number.
Do what with the numbers?
Subtract.
Subtract them, right? So what numbers am I subtracting?
7,
Minus what?
6.
Bigger number on top, you guys, for this. Bigger number on top, okay? What is 7 minus 6, Haiti?
-1.
So it's not -1, Haiti. 7 minus 6 is
1.
1, okay? Now, Jennifer, what is step 2? Use the sign of the
Bigger number.
bigger number. Is the 7 bigger or is the 6 bigger? Not right now. So, is it positive or negative? Negative. So our answer is -1. Okay, so we're going to go into our last example of this type of problem for rule 2, okay?
All
And
right.
I'm going to do it
Oh, can we do it beside this?
as if I was a student.
Can we do it as well if you want to?
You could do it as well if you would like to, okay? Okay,
Let me do it.
Oh.
this is a little confusing.
What? That's hard.
So, I have -4 minus -3.
Plus?
Okay, so, how am I going to do this? Well, there's another rule that I have to remember.
Oh, I remember.
Oh, I should do
If there are 2 negatives,
We could add a positive.
it becomes a,
Plus.
if there's 2 negatives next to each other, it becomes a what?
Plus.
Positive.
Plus, okay.
I'll use it. Oh, you use it.
So,
Oh, this means we have to use rule 1.
alright, here we go. Well, number 1, I'm going to look at my problem. There are, hold on, let me do this, okay? It might answer your question when I do this, okay? So, I'm going to look at my problem first. I know that 2 negatives next to each other makes a positive. So, the first thing I'm going to do is tackle this part. Since there are 2 negatives, it becomes a positive. Okay, so I figured that part out. Good, so I'm done. Now, I'm going to figure out the rest of my problem. Here's a negative, and then there's a number next to it, so it's a -4. And then, I'm going to come here, there's nothing in front of the 3, so it's going to be a +3. So I have -4 plus +3. I have a negative and I have a positive, which means I'm going to use rule number 2 because the signs are different. So step 1 says subtract the numbers. So 4 minus 3 equals 1. And then use the sign of the bigger number.
It's 4.
There's a 4 and a 3.
Oh, 4.
4 is bigger, so I'm using the negative sign. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs to the side.
And plus class.
The only thing you need to remember is that when you see two negatives next to each other in the middle, it becomes a
Positive.
positive, okay? What?
Class is
Good job.
over.
You ready to try one with
Yeah.
your partner?
No.
Yay.
I know.
And you spoilers.
You messed up.
-6 minus -3.
Easy.
Come on, you guys. -6 minus -3. I'd like you to work with your partner, please.
That equals a
What is
positive.
that?
That means a negative.
Remember to first tackle the middle. First tackle the middle. When there's two negatives next to each other,
And then that's a
Do it fast.
I need you to work with your partner, okay?
plus. No, not times. Plus.
So you're not doing what I asked you to do. In the middle, you see there's two negatives next to each other? Tackle that first.
And
What do
that's
those two negatives become?
And then 6 is bigger, so it's -3. Done.
A plus. Good.
It's -3. Basic.
Good.
Did you get
So the answer is going to be
negative?
negative or positive?
Yeah.
Good.
We're like, yay.
Good job.
6
Good.
3.
Wait. It's 9. Is your 6 or your 3 bigger?
Is it 9
I got
There you
this.
go, Heidi.
Do the
What
answer.
side?
Oh.
Oh, wait. No, you're right. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
There.
You're right.
Is it 3? Negative.
Good. Good job.
I got negative. I got this answer negative.
Good.
Miss Abby, you got me one.
Oh.
Yay.
And then the sign will be positive or negative?
I'll show you my answer.
Good. Okay. So when I'm given this problem, we're running out of time, so this is why we're kind of rushing up, okay? So when we're given this problem, Jocelyn, what's the first thing I should tackle in this problem?
The 2 negatives.
The two negatives. When you see a problem like this, we should always tackle the two negatives first. What does it become?
A plus.
A plus. So we're done with that. Now what am I tackling, Kevin? Yes, -6. And what can I do for my ice? Parentheses. And then is this a positive or a -3?
It's a positive.
Positive 3 because there's nothing in front of it, right? So, is this rule 1 or 2?
2.
Rule number 2. So we're going to subtract the numbers. What number is going on top, Katie?
6.
Minus what?
3.
Okay. And what is 6 minus 3?
Minus 3.
Your answer shouldn't be -3. What is 6 minus 3?
It's just 3
This is 3.
It's 3. So I'm going to put a 3. And then step 2 is to use the sign of the what, Katie? Bigger number. Which one's bigger, 6 or 3?
6.
So is it positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative. So our answer is
-3.
thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs to the side. Okay. So tomorrow we will, so today we're not packing up yet. Please sit down. Please sit down. So today you learned how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers using rule number 2. Yesterday we used rule number 1. Tomorrow we will be doing both rules. We'll do a review in the beginning of the class. We'll use both rules. You'll have to tell me which rule it'll be, and then I will have you solve the problems, okay?
All right.
And then you will be taking your quiz so I can check for understanding. and who I need to reteach and what I need to reteach because it might be the whole class getting a single problem wrong. Then after that, we will be doing independent work, okay?
All right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna read it right now. Hold on.
Yeah.